We're now live and recording.
Great, thank you, Paula. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's August 11th, Wednesday at 6:34. We're going to start, so we're going to call the meeting to order. And Jessica, you're going to make sure I don't step out of bounds here, and we do all the legal stuff. Okay, thank you.
We're going to start with Committee of Adjustment.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to, so we've got approval of minutes. So I'll need a motion for that.
A little bit fast.
I'll move.
Councillor Barkley.
Oh, but I did feel like having.
Second it.
Thank you. Councillor Doreen O'Sullivan. Disclosure of interest. Seeing none. Okay. So I'm going to turn this over to Amy Martin, Planning Department. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll have Planning Clerk Debbie Wood read out the recital ahead of our public meeting. Debbie, please.
Thank you.
So the Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public meeting to consider an application for lands located at 1008 Whitney Road, Lot 10, Concession 5, Geographic Township of South Gore, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to permit an increase to the maximum accessory structure floor area. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed minor variance application. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this public meeting or written submissions before the committee makes a decision on the proposed variance application, the Ontario Lands Tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. I, Debbie Wood, Secretary Treasurer, will keep a record summary of this meeting. Any persons who wish further notice of the committee's decision concerning this matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to the Secretary Treasurer following adjournment of this public meeting. Are there any people here for this public meeting? And if so, could you please acknowledge? I believe that Barry is here.
Yes, I'm here, Debbie.
Perfect. Thank you, Barry. I will now pass the meeting over to Crystal Lanstra, Deputy Director of Planning and Development, who will give an overview of the application for 1008 Whitney Road.
Thanks, Debbie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't on mute. So through the chair to the committee, the application before you is A-07-21 for 1008 Whitney Road. So the application is for a minor variance to the comprehensive zoning bylaw to increase the maximum accessory structure floor area from, as Debbie stated, 845.4 square meters. That's 9,100 square feet. To 984.4 square meters, which is 10,596 square feet. So this property may look familiar to you as it was subject to a zoning bylaw amendment that occurred this year in March. That was ZBA-02-01. So this application is within the rural area. The current uses for the property are rural residential and agricultural, and the surrounding properties are also agricultural rural residential uses. Next slide. So the lands have an existing single detached dwelling, and I believe there's 4 accessory structures. One of those is a horse barn. So the initial application was to allow for an additional structure, and this would be an accessory structure for the agricultural use and is for hay storage. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the requested structure. So please note, from the original application you saw, the building is in the same location. The only difference is that there's an additional 20 feet in length that's been added to the structure. And next slide, please. So through the submission of a building permit, it was noted that the structure appeared to be about 20 feet longer than what was originally considered in the first application. As well, there was an accessory structure that was noted that wasn't fully understood when the initial application was submitted. So this variance would allow for additional gross floor area to bring us up to a total to allow all those structures. The application also went to South Nation Conservation as they originally commented because there's wetlands in close proximity, and I wanted to note that there was no objections or concerns from their agency. Next slide, please. So staff have assessed the increase in the square footage, and we've reviewed to make sure that it's minor in nature, meets the intent of the official plan and the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and that it's appropriate and desirable. So even with this increase in square footage, we're still looking at about 1% in overall lot coverage for accessory structures for the overall lot. All yard setbacks are met or exceeded. And also it's well buffered and screened from all the property lines. In terms of any impacts to the neighbors, we don't anticipate that there would be any. So it's the opinion of staff that the minor variance represents good planning, and we'd recommend that the committee grant the relief to allow the increase in the square or the floor area of the accessory structure. Thank you. Back to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Crystal. So the committee will now hear from the applicant, followed by members of the public who wish to speak either for or against the proposal. Following any comments from the public, the applicant will be offered an opportunity to respond to questions raised. All persons wishing to address the proposal will ask their questions through the chair. Please state your name, address, and postal code prior to addressing the committee. Committee members may also wish to ask questions through the chair to those making presentations. Did you have anything to say, Barry, or add?
No, I'm good. It was just a miscommunication in the telephone line, I think, from the original application, because it was always meant to be 140, but it got lost in translation somewhere, which is, it's okay. We're sorting it out now, so it's grand.
I don't believe we have any other members of the public who wish to speak. Committee members?
Okay, thank you, Debbie. My council colleagues, do you have any questions on this particular file?
I have none.
Sorry, were there any objections from any of the neighboring property owners?
Through the chair to the committee, we did not receive any, no.
Okay, because I don't see any, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's suitable.
Okay, if there's no objections, Debbie will move on.
Do you want me to read the resolution?
Please do, thank you.
Be it resolved that the committee approve application A721 for the following minor variance on the lands located at 1008 Whitney Road, Geographic Township of South Gore, now the municipality of North Grenville, to provide relief from section 9.4.2 for the special rural exception REU 57 zone to increase the maximum accessory structure floor area from, I think I might be missing a couple, from 9,100 square feet to 10,596 square feet.
I'm happy to move that resolution.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Barkley and Councillor O'Sullivan. All in favor? I think we're good to go. I don't see anybody objecting. Good. Okay, back to you.
That is all we have for today. It's that easy.
So we need to close the meeting.
Close, yes. Close, and I need a mover and a seconder on that.
Okay, I'll need a mover for that to close the meeting.
I'll move.
Councillor Barkley, thank you.
I'll second.
Councillor Strakajan, I think it was. All in favor? So be it. Amy, anything else to cover here, or are we done?
That is it for the Committee of Adjustment. We can move to the council meeting now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jessica, do I need to do anything? We're just going to call this meeting to order.
You can just call the meeting to order unless you want me to read out the how to participate in the meeting.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Go ahead.
Okay. Council meetings will be conducted virtually via Zoom. Council meetings will be live streamed on YouTube commencing at 6:30 p.m. To view the live stream, visit www.youtube.com/user/North Grenville/featured. Subsequent to the live stream, the video will be archived on the North Grenville YouTube channel under the Playlists tab titled North Grenville Online Council Meetings. To view the archived video post-meeting, visit www.youtube.com/user/North Grenville/playlists. For any members of the public wanting to attend the meeting virtually, pre-registration is required by emailing the clerk at northgrenville.on.ca. To make a deputation in relation to an item on the agenda, please pre-register with the clerk's office at the same email address. Please provide your comments no later than 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting. Please note that the Committee of Adjustment will proceed immediately prior to the council meeting. We did that. If you require accommodation, please advise the clerk when pre-registering so that we may best assist you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we are going to have an approval for the agenda. I'll need a mover for that.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Councillor Barkley. I need a seconder.
I'll second.
Councillor Strachan. All in favor? Okay, we have an agenda. Disclosure, anybody have any disclosures of interest? Seeing none, going to move ahead. So we have some presentations, delegations tonight, so we'll get started with that. Maybe Jessica, you can introduce them.
So we have Brenda and Lyle from the Canadian Cancer Society, who are going to discuss Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, which will take place September 1st to 30th, 2021.
Okay, welcome Brenda and Lyle, go ahead.
There we go. Sorry about that. The typical Zoom, I was muted. Hi, it's Brenda here. Lyle's having technical difficulties, so I'm going to read through our presentation. And just for clarity, neither one of us is with the Canadian Cancer Society. We're just two people coming for this presentation. So I want to thank you for allowing us to present to you this evening. My name is Brenda Burich. I am here with Lyle, even though he's unable to speak at the moment, with a request to have September recognized and declared as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in North Grenville. In the years past, we would have been here with the Canadian Cancer Society to promote this request, as well as our Neon Night Fun Run Kempville. But however, like so many, due to COVID, such events and the Canadian Cancer Society has since canceled future ones because of COVID. So we no longer have Neon Night events happening, not just in North Grenville, but in general. Next slide, please. However, COVID hasn't stopped children from being diagnosed with cancer, and there remains to bring this reality to the forefront of people's minds. Kids get cancer. September is internationally recognized as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. In Canada, over 1,400 children are diagnosed with cancer every year, and it's approximately 4 per day. Cancer remains the most common disease-related cause of death in children, more than asthma, diabetes, cystic fibrosis, and AIDS combined. It is the second only to injury-related deaths among Canadian children. Next slide. Research over the past 5 decades has led to new and more effective treatments for childhood cancers. And while progress has been made, we know there's still more work to be done. The average survival rate is 80%, but there are some kids whose survival rate is 0. 2/3 of children will suffer long-term effects, often developing another form of cancer. I'm sure you can imagine the effects of chemo, radiation, and other treatments on their young bodies. Next slide. The lives of these children and their families have been irreversibly changed as they face the battle of a lifetime before the child has even finished middle school. Next slide. Most people don't think it will happen to them, but it happened to both Lyle and I. We both had a child diagnosed with cancer, and we both lost our child to cancer. Sorry. No parent should ever lose a child, and pediatric cancers receive only 4% of cancer research funding. Next slide. I got it. By raising the flag for the month of September, we are promoting childhood cancer awareness. Something as simple as wearing a gold ribbon, contributing to pediatric oncology, or giving blood to a child. This awareness is needed to support our children. Patrick Sullivan, board chair of the Childhood Cancer Canada, has said, although overall outcomes are positive, there is much work to be done to address survivorship, toxicity of treatments, and the low cure rates of relapse and hard to treat cancers. Childhood Cancer Awareness Month provides an opportunity to share these challenges with the public and to remind them that these kids need our support now more than ever. Next slide. We thank you for your time. We're looking forward to an opportunity to raise this, the flag, hopefully in person with COVID restrictions, and that we're able to outreach to the community to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Very sorry for your loss, and you and Lyle as well. Awful thing to go through for a parent, absolutely. So my question, maybe you can answer this. When we're donating to Cancer Society, is it in general, or do you guys have specific places where we would donate for your particular cause for the childhood, or is it all the same?
Right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Lyle and I are not a member, like we're not employed by the Canadian Cancer Society. It was
Sure.
the Neon Night event when it was held in Kemptville. Ours was the only one specified for childhood cancer. Right now, the Canadian Cancer Society is just one lump. They don't have it earmarked unless you sent in your donation that way. So to be effective for childhood cancer specifically, you may want to look at, CHIO's oncology pediatric research or something to that effect. There's various ones that we can provide that are specific for childhood cancer.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Appreciate that. Lyle, did you want to say anything now? Looks like you're online.
He wasn't sure if he had vocals, though. He was able to get on for visual. Hopefully, I know Council is looking on improving internet for our area, so this is part of very much a need, as you can tell with tonight.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. Does my council colleagues have any questions? Nothing?
No questions. I just want to thank Brenda and Lyle for their work over the years. All of council has at one time or another participated in Neon Nights, and it's a great event, great community event. And I just hope people will understand that without those events, fundraising still has to continue, and that they'll contribute to any fund that goes to support research and treatment for childhood cancer. So thank you once again for presenting.
Yep, thank you, Brenda. Councilor O'Sullivan?
Thank you, Brenda and Lyle, for being here this evening. And I would be happy to move that we proclaim Childhood Cancer Month and that we raise the flag on September 1st.
Okay, I'll need a seconder for that.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Great, so moved. Jessica, do you want to read that one?
Be it resolved that Council receive the presentation and proclaim the month of September 2021 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and direct the childhood cancer flag be raised from September 1st through 30th, 2021 inclusive.
Great, thank you. Okay. Great, so Jessica, do you want to read that one?
Pardon me.
Resolved that council receive the presentation and proclaim the month of September 2021 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and direct the childhood cancer flag be raised for.
Apologies.
Wow. I've got a little loop there. Okay, I think that was the end of presentations and delegations. We have nothing else.
Correct.
So we will move on to the consent agenda. I believe we have to read something about that.
Yes. A consent agenda item, a consent agenda is included in this meeting agenda. Does any council member request removal of a consent agenda item? It is the council meeting minutes of July 14th. Seeing no
none.
request. Sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Seeing no request to remove an item from the consent agenda, the consent matters include item 1. If there is
Okay,
no
so I need a
objection,
mover. There's no objection. I need a mover for that, I believe. John,
Second.
Councillor Barkley, and Councillor Strachan. All in favor? So we moved, okay. Next. Okay, so we're going to reports now, I believe, Jessica. We're skipping over the minutes because you just did that. Okay, so we're going to reports. The first one we have is the CEO office, CAO office. And Hillary, I believe you're going to cover this one. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you and good evening, Council, and thank you for hearing this report tonight. As many of you know, a new holiday was proposed in the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was action number 80. The federal government was called upon in collaboration with Indigenous peoples to establish a statutory holiday to honor survivors of residential schools, their families, and communities, and ensure that public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. On June 3rd, 2021, Bill C-5 received royal assent. The provisions came into force on August 3rd, 2021, and moving forward, September 30th, 2021 will be the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. At the municipal level, any day can be recognized for significance by the Mayor and Council. September 30th coincides with what many know as Orange Shirt Day. Staff are recommending a day of recognition and are establishing a plan for honoring the day. As part of our larger efforts towards truth and reconciliation, we will explore appropriate methods of recognition for September 30th moving forward. In addition, the municipality has been flying flags at half-mast to honor the children whose lives were taken at former residential schools. To continue this recognition, and after consultation with representatives from the Indigenous community, the Every Child Matters flag will be flown at the North Grenville Municipal Center in place of the North Grenville flag. Staff are currently working with community partners, including local Indigenous peoples, on a comprehensive response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Tonight's staff report reviews the 9 calls to action that directly apply to municipalities. In advance of this response, recognizing September 30th is a vital first step. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Council colleagues, any questions on this matter? No? Okay. Jessica, I think we can move ahead then.
be it resolved that Council recognize September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and raise the Every Child Matters flag in continued recognition and remembrance of the children and their families impacted by the residential school system and our Indigenous communities.
Okay, I'll need a mover for this.
I'd like to move this.
Councillor Strachan, and a seconder, Councillor O'Sullivan, please. Thank you. All in favor? So moved. Okay, so Jessica, we're moving into the public meetings now on the zoning.
Council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider an application for lands legally described as 1025 County Road 44, part of Lot 27 and 28, Concession 10, from Special Rural Kennel to the Rural Special Exemption RU60 zone and the Rural Special Exemption RU61 zone for the severed lands, to remove the Special Kennel exemption as well as to address required zone provisions as a condition of severance applications B 5919 and B 11220. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And if appellant does not provide comments at this public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the local planning appeal tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any persons who wish further notice of council's decision concerning this matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to Crystal Lanstra, Deputy Director of Planning and Development, via email following adjournment of this public meeting. Contact information can be found on the notice of public meeting and will be provided at the end of this presentation. Anyone wishing to ask a question during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand feature in Zoom. When asking a question, please identify yourself and provide your address and postal code for the clerk to record as part of the public record. Are there people here for this public meeting? If so, could you please acknowledge yourself through the raise hand feature on Zoom?
I see Peter and Ledwina on the call here. I don't know if they know how to acknowledge or not. Mr. Vusic, can you hear us? Okay, we got the go ahead. Got a hand signal there.
I believe
Thank
Mr. Vusic is experiencing a bit of a lag in his audio, just so you're aware.
Okay, and so who's going to do this presentation?
Can you hear me now?
Director? Yes, we can hear you now, Peter.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Peter, yes. So,
yes.
So we're going to go ahead. We're going to do the presentation, and if you have any questions or comments, please do.
Okay, Crystal, sorry, yeah. Crystal will be giving the presentation. Crystal, are you good to go?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Perfect. So before you is application ZBA-09-21, described as 1025 County Road 44. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located at 1025 County Road 44, and it's in the municipality's rural area. The surrounding properties are rural residential properties, and they range in size and configuration. The principal primary use is single detached dwellings and accessory structures for the most part. Next slide. The subject lands currently have a single detached dwelling, a workshop, and a single car garage. There's also an existing old foundation on the lands. The current zoning is a special rural kennel zone, and this permits a kennel, an animal shelter, a vet clinic, etc., all of which are not currently uses on the subject lands, and they're also not proposed uses. Excuse me. The lands are designated rural in the municipality's official plan. Next slide, please. So the provisionally approved consent application proposed to create a new lot as shown up on the slide. So the existing development footprint and all the structures would remain on the retained lands, and a new accessible single detached dwelling is proposed for the severed lands. Just if you can note, there is a little bit of the parcel information and the aerial imagery doesn't match up perfectly. So all of the existing development would be on that retained lands. It just doesn't show so well on the map. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the application is to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw to place the subject lands in a zone that's best suited to control for the proposed residential uses. So the amendment would remove that rural kennel provision. It would reflect the appropriate lot sizes. It would reduce the lot frontages, and it recognizes the reduced side yard setback for the existing structures on that retained parcel. Next slide, please. So the proposed special exemption zones that you see here, they're required to address the reduced lot frontages on both the severed and retained. So lot frontages under the required 60 meters, they are common in the area as on many of the other surrounding rural residential parcels. So as such, the requested reduction, it's not anticipated to cause any negative impacts for the area. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. It conforms to both the county and the North Grenville official plan, and it meets the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So staff do recommend that council approve and enact bylaw 77-21 to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Council colleagues, do you have any questions? Councillor O'Sullivan?
Thank you, and thank you, Crystal. I look forward to meeting you in person someday soon, but welcome to the team. And my question has to do with, I think there's a shared driveway. Is that any concern going forward? That's my only question. And well, sorry, another question. It looks like there's a building on the land to be severed. Are there houses actually on both of the lands? And is there the house that's planned and the new build is on the severed property? If that's correct? So my main question is the shared driveway. Is that a problem?
Sure. So there was a consent application that was approved through the consent granting authority that does legalize that shared entrance. So that was done through the counties. And from our perspective, there should be no concerns with that setup. And then to address your question for the structures, there is no like full buildings on that severed parcel. The new lot is completely vacant aside from an old foundation. It could be because of that shift in the mapping, it doesn't look so much like that. So that could have been slightly confusing, but all of the existing footprint is on the retained lands. And that is a complete single detached dwelling rural residential parcel. And then the retained is completely vacant. And that is where the new development footprint would go once everything is approved.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Jessica, I'll let you take it over.
So council will now hear from the applicant, followed by questions or comments from members of the public who wish to comment either for or against the proposal. Following any comments from the public, the applicant will be offered an opportunity to respond to questions raised. All persons wishing to address the proposal will ask their questions through the chair. Please state your name, address, and postal code prior to council. Council members may also wish to ask questions through the chair to those making the presentation. Please be advised that any member of the public who should wish to provide written comment regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment can do so after the public meeting is adjourned. Written comment can be received up until the zoning bylaw amendment is considered by council. It is intended that the zoning bylaw amendment be brought forward for consideration on August 11th, 2021.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, we're going to attempt to see if I believe from the applicant first, Mr. Vusic, and potentially from the public. So, Mr. Vusic, do you have any comments?
Sure. Written comment can be received up until the zoning bylaw amendment is considered by council. It is intended that the zoning bylaw amendment be brought forward for consideration on August 11th, 2021.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, we're going to attempt to see if I believe from the applicant first, Mr. Vusic, and potentially from the public. So,
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Written comment can be received up until the zoning bylaw amendment is considered by council. It is intended that the zoning bylaw amendment be brought forward for consideration on August 11th, 2020.
I have nothing to add. I'm quite happy with it.
We're going to attempt this legal from the applicant first, Mr. Disick, and potentially.
Okay, Mr. Disick, if you could mute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Jessica, are you able to mute him?
He is now muted.
Okay, great. And do we have any questions from the public?
Nothing has been received in advance.
Okay. Okay, so I'll let you finish up, Jessica. Thank you.
So it's just declaring that this public meeting is closed before we can go into the next one.
Okay.
Excuse me, do we need to move second and vote this resolution, or do we do that later?
So it will do it right now after the meeting, that public meeting closes, and then we can do the resolution.
Right.
So be it resolved that council approve and enact bylaw 7721 to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw 5012 to amend zoning for severed lands located at 1025 County Road 44, part of lot 27 and 28, concession 10, from special rural kennel to rural special exemption RU 60 zone and rural special exemption RU 61 zone, removing the special kennel provision, reflecting appropriate lot size and reducing lot frontages and side yard setbacks, all to comply with conditions of severance B 5919 and B 11221.
Okay,
I
thank
so
you.
move.
Councillor Barkley is our mover, and seconder, Councillor Strachan. All in favor? So moved. Okay, Jessica.
Council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider an application for lands legally described as 1101 South Gore Drive, part of lot 41 and 42, concession to former township of South Gore for the agricultural A1 and rural RU zones to agricultural 2, A2 zone to prohibit the residential uses on the retained lands. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide comments at this public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the local planning appeal tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any persons who wish further notice of the council's decision concerning this matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to Crystal Lanstra, Deputy Director of Planning and Development, via email following adjournment of this public meeting. Contact information can be found on the notice of the public meeting and will be provided at the end of the presentation. Anyone wishing to ask a question during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. When asking a question, please identify yourself and provide your address and postal code for the clerk to record as part of the public record. Are there people here for this public meeting? If so, please acknowledge yourself through the raise hand feature on Zoom. I don't believe anyone is here for this one. I'll now pass the meeting over to Crystal Lanstra, Deputy Director of Planning and Development.
Thank you. So this before you is application ZBA-11-21 for 1101 South Gore Drive. So the application is a condition of consent for a severance application that's been given provisional approval by the consent granting authority at the county. Next slide, please. So subject property is on South Gore Drive, and it's in the municipality's rural and agricultural area. So the surrounding uses are rural residential and agricultural uses. And also it's important to note a large portion of the subject lands are located within the floodplain. Next slide, please. So the subject lands are agricultural with the existing development footprint, and the applicants are looking to sever the existing development footprint as it's surplus to their agricultural operation, and they would have that agricultural lands and consolidate with other land holdings that they own. Next slide, please. The provisional consent. So this is the configuration that we are left with. What's outlined in red is the retained lands, and this area of lands is what is subject to the zoning bylaw amendment. The severed lands are entirely within the floodplain, and that already prohibits residential development, and therefore there's no reason to rezone it, as this application is focusing on what's outlined in red. And next slide, please. So subject lands are designated floodplain hazard and mineral aggregate within the official plan for North Grenville. So both designations do not permit lot creation for residential purposes, and as such, this amendment is required to prohibit the residential uses on that retained land. After all these applications are approved, it's not anticipated that there is any development associated with this application. It appears as though it's to consolidate that farmland and remove the development footprint as it's surplus to their operation. Next slide, please. So this is what the proposed zoning looks like. There is no special exemptions required for the application. The agricultural A1 areas and the rural zoned lands, which are shown in the blue here, that's what's proposed to be rezoned to the agricultural 2 zone. And the main difference in that zone is that it prohibits the residential development. So the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. It conforms to both the county's and North Grenville's official plan, and it also meets the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So staff recommend that council approve and enact bylaw 78-21 to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. My council colleagues have any questions?
From the presentation, through you, Chair, to Crystal, I understand that the severed lands don't require rezoning because they would remain wetlands. And there's no rezoning required for the retained lands because they were already agricultural use. I'm just curious what is the benefit to the owner, I guess, to sell the severed land, but it's none of my business, but I'm just curious why they would go through this process.
So through the chair, so the application does create the 2 separate land holdings. So a benefit could be there are now 2 parcels. The difference in why we're rezoning is that the official plan doesn't permit additional residential uses being created. So what the rezoning is doing is essentially, while there is that new lot being created to allow them to consolidate their agricultural lands, it's not creating any new residential uses, and therefore it conforms to the official plan. So I believe the benefit would be they're going from 1 lot to 2, but it is conforming to all of our policies and requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Crystal, just a question. Maybe you can show or we can put the slide back up. You were showing the slide with the blue and the checkered red and the red. So you're zoning the blue an A2. And it's very jagged looking, like it's not an easy thing for me to say, okay, this is how we're going to sever this or to zone it. Now, you're the expert in this area. I mean, wetlands change over time. What happens to the zoning there if the wetlands shift or get bigger or smaller? What happens in that case? Or am I off if this question is maybe out to lunch, I don't know.
No, the reason why that's jagged is that the zoning is essentially following the floodplain, which you are correct, it can change over time depending on what is built or if there's fill or if there are wetlands in certain places, that can change that boundary. There is provisions within our bylaw that do allow us to reflect the mapping of RVCA to accommodate for that fluctuation in that boundary. And essentially, typically what happens is if it's going to move, the zone that the lands that were under that get is what's most nearest to them. And you would just reflect that that's now the zone on those properties. So what happens here as we're rezoning those A2, if it was to move slightly, and it's not going to move much, probably in our lifetime, it could move not at all, because we do have RVCA that's watching out for those things. But if it was, those lands would just take that A2 zone. I hope that answers it for you.
Yep, that's fine. Yes, it does. Thank you. Council colleagues, anything before we move on? No, seeing none. Okay, Jessica.
Council will now hear from the applicant, followed by questions or comments from members of the public who wish to comment either for or against the proposal. Following any comments from the public, the applicant will be offered the opportunity to respond to questions raised. All persons wishing to address the proposal will ask their questions through the chair. Please state your name, address, and postal code prior to council. Council members may also wish to ask questions to the chairs to those making presentations. Please be advised that any member of the public who should wish to provide written comment regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment can still do so after the public meeting is adjourned. Written comment can be received up until the zoning bylaw amendment is considered by council. It is intended that the zoning bylaw amendment will be brought forward for consideration on August 11th, 2021. The applicant is not on this evening.
Okay, do we have any questions from the public? I don't see any. Jessica, I don't know if you see anybody. No.
I see none.
Okay, we'll move on then.
Okay, so we'll declare this public meeting closed. Be it resolved that council approve and enact bylaw 7821 to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw 50-12, to amend the zoning for the lands located at 1101 South Gore Drive, part of lot 41 and 42, concession 2, former township of South Gore, from the agricultural A1 and rural RU zones to the agricultural 2 A2 zone, to prohibit residential uses on the retained lands.
Okay, I'll need a mover. Councillor Barkley, and a seconder, Councillor Strachan. All in favor? So moved.
Council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider an application for lands legally described as 410 Slater Road from agriculture to agriculture special exemption A1-10 and agriculture 2A2 to permit a minimum lot area of 0.5 acres, a minimum lot frontage of 35 meters, and reduce the minimum separation distance to a livestock facility from 81 meters to 42 meters for the severed parcel, and prohibit residential uses on the retained parcel. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide comments at the public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the local planning appeal tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any persons who wish further notice of the council's decision concerning this matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to Amy Martin, Director of Planning and Development, via email following the adjournment of this public meeting. Contact information can be found on the notice of the public meeting and will be provided at the end of the presentation. Anyone wishing to ask a question during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. When asking a question, please identify yourself and provide your address and postal code for the clerk to record as part of the public record. Are there people here for this public meeting? If so, could you please acknowledge yourself through the raise hand feature on Zoom? I will now pass the meeting over to Amy Martin, Director of Planning and Development.
Amy, you're up.
Yeah, no, I'm just waiting on the slides. Sorry.
That's okay.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of council. So our final public meeting tonight is for the property located at 410 Slater Road. Next slide, please. The property is located within the rural area just east of the hamlet of Hexton on Slater Road. And it's surrounded by other rural and agricultural uses as well as rural residential uses. Next slide, please. Based on the aerial photography, you can see that there is development located on the south side of Slater Road. This includes a single detached dwelling. There is a small horse barn as well as an agricultural structure located on this parcel as well. And the rest of the property is under agricultural production. Next slide, please. So here's the severance sketch that was included. So the application started as a severance, file B4221, which has received provisional consent to sever off the existing house from the remainder of the property. So the remainder or the retained lot will include the 30 by 40 horse barn, as well as the agricultural storage building. And then the severed lot will have the house, the septic, and the well. Next slide, please. So the staff have received an application to have the lands rezoned to recognize the smaller lot frontage and lot area for a lot in the agricultural zone that's used for residential purposes and to reduce the minimum distance setback required from a livestock facility. The retained lands from the severance will be rezoned to prohibit residential dwelling units, and this is in accordance with our policies for surplus dwelling severances in the agricultural designation. The primary use on the properties are not being changed through the application, and there's no new development that's occurring at this time in regards to the lots that are being created. The reduced lot frontage and reduced lot area is common in the area. There are residential lots just west of the property within the hamlet of Hexton, which are of a similar size and frontage. The applicants are seeking to reduce the lot area and lot frontage in order to preserve as much agricultural land as possible. So the zoning bylaw typically requires a minimum frontage of 60 meters and a minimum lot area of 1 acre. However, if they were to achieve this lot size, they would be taking out land that's under agricultural production. So in this case, the application has been requested to just recognize that the house exists on half an acre as it has been with a smaller frontage. The applicants are also seeking to reduce the minimum distance separation that's required from a livestock facility. So in this case, there is a horse barn that houses 2 horses on the property. So when staff ran the calculation through the AgriSuite software, the minimum setback required from the house to the barn was 81 meters. But the setback that's achieved right now is only 42 meters. Both buildings are existing, so it's not as if we can ask for them both to comply. So through the zoning bylaw amendment, we're just recognizing the fact that it can't meet MDS or minimum distance separation. And again, as I mentioned, as per our policies, we rezone the retained lands to prohibit residential dwellings, just to ensure that we're protecting our agricultural land where it is situated. Next slide, please. From a policy perspective, I'm just demonstrating the fact that we are required as part of the provincial policy statement, and it trickles down through the official plans, that we are to preserve our farmlands where we can through farm consolidation. So again, this is the policy where we rezone the retained lands to prohibit residential dwellings. Next slide, please. And again, our official plan mimics the same policies as the provincial policy statement and county's official plan. And we're also required that when we're creating new lots, that they must comply with minimum distance separation. And where they can't, we are able to recognize that through a zoning bylaw amendment to reduce any setback requirements. Next slide, please. So the zoning provisions that are being proposed just recognize the minimum lot area at half an acre, minimum lot frontage of 35 meters, and it reduces that minimum separation distance to 42 meters. Next slide, please. So staff are the opinion that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment constitutes good land use planning and are recommending that council supports the application for 410 Slater Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martin. Okay. Council colleagues, do you have any questions? Nothing? Amy, just a quick question. I see you're basically taking a 58 meters by 36 meter chunk out of the middle of the property or somewhat in the middle, let's say on the roadside, at the road. What's the access then to this property? Would there be would you approve a new access to the rest of the property, or what? How would they access the property other than maybe their own lot, but in the future?
So the residential already has an established access, and there would be a separate agricultural access to this property. So there's no change in how the property would be accessed through the severance application.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's no other questions from council colleagues, so Jessica, go ahead.
Council will now hear from the applicant, followed by questions or comments from members of the public who wish to comment either for or against the proposal. Following any comments from the public, the applicant will be offered an opportunity to respond to questions raised. All persons wishing to address the proposal will ask their questions through the chair. Please state your name, address, and postal code prior to council. Council members may also wish to ask questions through the chair to those making presentations. Please be advised that any member of the public who should wish to provide written comment regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment can still do so after the public meeting is adjourned. Written comment can be received up until the zoning bylaw amendment is considered by council. It is intended that the zoning bylaw amendment will be brought forward for consideration on August 11th, 2021. And the applicant is not here.
Okay, so we're looking for any questions from the public? I don't see any. Okay, go ahead, Jessica.
So this public meeting is closed. Be it resolved that council approve and enact bylaw 7921 to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw 50-12 to amend the zoning for the lands located at 410 Slater Road from agriculture to agriculture special exemption A110 and agriculture 2 A2 to permit a minimum lot area of 0.5 acres, a minimum lot frontage of 35 meters, and reduce the minimum separation distance to a livestock facility from 81 meters to 42 meters for the severed parcel, and prohibit residential uses on the retained parcel.
Okay, I'll need a mover. Councillor Sullivan. Seconder, Councillor Barkley. All in favor? So moved. Okay, Jessica, next.
So next we have the subdivision agreement for Oxford Heights Phase 2.
Okay, and is Amy, are you handling this one? Thank you.
Yes, I am, Deputy Mayor. So I just, Pollock will just call up my two images just to put some context to where the proposed subdivision is located. So Oxford Heights Phase 2 is located just west of the town of Kemptville, and it's just in behind Phase 1, just off the Abbott Road. Next slide, please. So the subdivision agreement that we're seeking council authority to enter into would allow for the registration of the 10 rural lot subdivision. So this would create 10 single detached residential homes. As per the report, the developer and their consultants have met the requirements. All the draft conditions within the draft plan approval have been incorporated to the agreement, and all external agencies who provided conditions to be included within the subdivision agreement are satisfied that they have been included. And our engineering team here at North Granville is satisfied that all the engineering documents and reports are acceptable to move forward with the creation of the subdivision. So to that end, staff are seeking authorization to have the clerk and the mayor to sign the subdivision agreement so we can have this project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Council colleagues, do you have any questions? Doreen, you're not bringing up sidewalks or trees?
These are large lots, so I think it's okay.
I'll take the bait, but I don't think we have design guidelines in place that would give us any muscle to insist on sidewalks or more trees.
Yeah, with that, Amy, do you have any more details on what this, are we going into the weeds on this right now? Is this too early?
So a lot of those details and elements would have been decided at the draft plan approval stage as to those requirements. So at this time, this is just more of the formalization of a subdivision that's had draft plan approval for quite a few years now. And they're just ready to put it into place. I would have to speak to Public Works in regards to the standards as with rural subdivisions and sidewalks. But future subdivisions as they come forward through the regular process of needing council approvals with our design guidelines, which are underway, would definitely, we'd have that ability for that kind of input.
Right. And what was the date of the draft approval on this?
It goes back to 2014, I believe, is when the draft approval was first given.
Okay, so it's quite a bit older one, well before our time. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Jessica, that's it.
I'm just confirming no more questions here. Perfect. So be it resolved that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the subdivision agreement for Oxford Heights Phase 2, subject to further review by the municipal solicitor.
Okay, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Strachan, Councillor O'Sullivan, all in favor? So moved. Thank you, Jessica.
So next we have Parks and Recreation with their agreement with Agricultural Research Institute of Ontario for facilities management services at the Kemptville campus. And I believe Joe is here to speak to that matter.
I am. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. The purpose of the report is to obtain authorization to enter an agreement between the Agricultural Research Institute of Ontario and the municipality pursuant to the Parks, Recreation, Culture will provide facility.
So, Councillor O'Sullivan, can you mute yourself, please?
Provide facility management services to the Kemptville campus farm side. Agricultural Research Institutes Ontario's contract with Larmax Inc. to provide groundskeeping and maintenance services for these lands expired in 2021. They are currently using services locally from landscaping business. Historically, the facilities division has not provided these services. However, the division can utilize this opportunity to enhance its current staffing complements, knowledge and skill set. The total amount payable by the Agricultural Research Institute of Ontario to the municipality for facility management services under the agreement is $84,750 inclusive of HST, payable in 3 installments. These include an administrative fee of $26,000, which will be charged for the purposes of assigning a dedicated staff person to oversee the property. This dedicated staff person will be one of our full-time facilities operators that is keen to take on new responsibilities. The funds generated from the administrative fee will offset the replacement of the seconded staff from their current operational duties. The facilities division will replace the seconded staff with a contract operator position to ensure operational requirements are maintained. This will provide an additional opportunity for growth within the facilities division. I would be happy to answer any questions regarding this report.
Council colleagues, any question? Thank you, Joe.
How long is this contract for? Is
It's
it just
until,
a single year, or?
It's until March 31st, 2021. Or 2022, sorry, my apologies.
And the farm side lands will be, to a certain extent, taken over by the international plowing match. And at that time, will they be responsible for maintaining the farm side?
Sorry, we're maintaining it up to March 31st. We're trying to maintain it until the plowing match, where that transition period hasn't really been decided yet. But the understanding is till March 31st, and then we were going to go from there to see how the planning in the spring came.
So I would suspect that well before March 31st, we'll have some idea of
Absolutely
what happens. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else? No? Joe, can you kind of give us a high level, what type of maintenance type of work that you think you guys will be doing on that property?
Yeah, absolutely. So the agreement is general facility inspections, maintaining the facilities to what we assume them. If there's any roof leaks, we'll maintain it. Security issues, regular health and safety inspections, rodents, that sort of things. If there's any storms, we would go inspect. Snowstorms, we have a duty to make sure the buildings are accessible. Just general facility maintenance. However, the buildings are not used day to day, but we just have to maintain them so they're accessible and well maintained.
Okay, thank you. I believe the campus staff have been doing some monitoring, maybe not maybe maintenance, but I believe they've been over there on the property for the last few years off and on. Is that true?
That's something I'm not 100% sure on, sir. I can't answer that.
That's okay. So I'm guessing the municipality is just going to be taking over what they were doing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Jessica.
Be it resolved that Council authorize the municipality to enter into an agreement with the Agricultural Research Institute of Ontario for the delivery of facilities management services at the Kemptville campus, and authorize the Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture or his designate to execute the agreement.
Okay, I'll need a mover. Councillor O'Sullivan, a seconder. Councillor Barkley, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. So moved.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica, next.
So next we have informational reports, and I have none. And then correspondence, which is the Oxford Mills Community Association request for funding.
Okay. Is anybody speaking on that, or are we just to have read the, I mean, I'm familiar with the document, but.
I would just, I'm prepared to speak to it, but I would note that Neil White from the OMCA is attending this meeting virtually, and he might want to speak to it.
Mark is here as well. So there's multiple representatives.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah. Go ahead. Or it's up to you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you pass the ball to us?
Yes, go ahead, Neil. Thank you.
Okay. So I think you guys have seen the letter that we submitted, and admittedly, it was short notice. So what we're trying to do is host a community event and centering it rather than in Maplewood Park. We're looking to get some attention to Crozier, and so it's targeted at Crozier, and it's a one-day event, August 28th, and you know, the plan is barbecue and volleyball tournament, make use of the volleyball facilities that are in the park, host a barbecue, as I mentioned, some kids games, lots of kids games are planned, and we're going to host some live music. And as part of the requirement of getting people in that area, we have some expenses that have come up in order to get porta potties and washing stations brought into the vicinity. And we've had some discussions with Joe about, you know, the best place for those. And, you know, we think we can adhere to all those requests. Anyway, the request was for funding in the amount of $355.95 or thereabouts. We've also been in touch with a number of businesses in the area that are not COVID affected, and we're receiving, I would say, positive response. We're seeking modest funding assistance from a number of those businesses. So that's the ask, $355.95. We do apologize that it's a short-term tabling, and you know, the event kind of came to be in short order, I would say, and that was the reason for not giving you guys more visibility on the request. So that's the nature. If there are any questions about the event, please, we can address them. We've been through the FSEAT process and we can comply with all the requests. We're pretty well staffed. We think it's going to be a nice event for the community, and we think we can adhere to all the COVID restrictions and concerns that we all have. We're pretty well organized in that respect.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah,
Dr.
I'd just like to, part of the delay is, the OMCA can't shoulder all of the blame. They did approach me quite a while ago about whether the municipality would be able to entertain a request for funds. And at that point, I didn't know, given that there were no guidelines for the community grants posted in 2020 or 2021. So I consulted with our director of finance, and he said, yes, it would just require a simple letter to council, and it would be at council's discretion whether they wanted to entertain the request or not. So just put it in context, could have come to you much earlier if I knew sort of whether it was possible or not.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Barkley. Councilor colleagues, we have, I think, 3 choices. We say no. We move it to another meeting for approval, or somebody makes a motion tonight to get the $355 to these folks so that they can have their event. What do you think?
I'm prepared to move granting them the amount, but obviously it's up to the rest of council to decide. I'm somewhat invested in the community and this event, so I'll just go on the record saying that.
I think we're all invested. Okay, do we have a seconder for this? Councilor O'Sullivan? Okay, so Jessica, I guess you're gonna have to do a motion up for this. Thank you.
So be it resolved that council support the Oxford Mills Community Association's Community Day event and fund $355.95 toward 2 portable washroom facilities and a hand washing station to comply with health and safety requirements.
Okay, so we have a mover, Councilor Barkley, and a seconder, Councilor O'Sullivan. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
I'm just going to interject very quickly and thank you as well. We really appreciate this.
You're very welcome. Thank you for stepping up, you guys, Neil and Mark, to have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
We invite you all to come out and enjoy the day.
Yes.
August 28th. What time?
August 28th, 10 till 3:30.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica, thank you.
So we have our notice of motions. There are none, I don't believe. Introduction and consideration of bylaws. Bylaw 7721, a bylaw to amend bylaw 50-12, being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and use of buildings and structures within the municipality of North Grenville for the zoning of lands located at 1025 County Road 44. Bylaw 7821, a bylaw to amend bylaw 50-12, being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and use of buildings and structures within the municipality of North Grenville for the zoning of lands located at 1101 South Gore Drive. And bylaw 7921, a bylaw to amend bylaw 50-12, being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and use of buildings and structures within the municipality of North Grenville for the zoning of lands located at 410 Slater Road. Those have gone through what they need to. So with period of questions from the public and media relating to agenda items.
Okay, do we have any questions from the media or public at this point? You're taking it easy on me tonight. Okay, I guess we need a confirmation bylaw.
That's correct. So be it resolved, bylaw 80-21, to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on August 11th, 2021, be adopted and passed.
You know, mover, Councilor Strachan, Councilor Barkley, all in favor? So moved.
And resolution to adjourn, be it resolved that this regular meeting of council adjourn at On your behalf, 7:49 p.m.
Need a mover? Councillor O'Sullivan and Councillor Stracker. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you, council colleagues. Not quite an hour. Sorry about that, a little over. That's it. We can close the meeting now.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good
Stay
job.
cool.